Good afternoon, everyone, and I'd like to welcome you all to the first SAICE Civil Talk of the year. Today, we will be exploring a very critical and very timely topic, which is AI and automation. And more importantly, we will be touching on whether our industry is evolving fast enough to keep up with it. So welcome all. As civil engineers and infrastructure professionals, we know that we're witnessing like a rapid shift driven by emerging technologies. And some of the questions that come up when we are dealing with automation is are we adapting quickly enough? Is our infrastructure future ready for the rise of AI and automation? Are we even seeing that the electrical vehicles that are becoming the norm? Are our roads resilient? Are they responsive? And are we equipped to meet these new demands? So these are a few questions that we're going to be addressing today in our civil talk with the help of three of my panel. Excuse me, I'm seeing that there's a sound problem. Can everyone hear me properly? Please just give me a thumbs up. Okay, thank you so much for that. If you can't hear me properly, please just join again, rejoin, and then you should be okay. Okay, so some of the questions that we're going to be addressing today are the ones that I've just touched on. But I have three panel speakers who are going to assist me with this, which is going to make it more interactive. And we're going to make sure that the discussion today is dynamic and it's very insightful. So I'd like to just encourage everyone to have active participation so that this can be an interactive session instead of us just talking. And also with that, without any further delay, I'd like to just introduce our panelists, and I'm going to give each of them a 5 to about 7 minute time, just so that they can all give us an overview of their professional background and their expertise before we actually delve into the heart of today's discussion. Thank you so much. So today I'm going to start with Lerato Khoa. Let me just give a brief background of who she is before she can just introduce herself. So Lerato is a transport engineer and a senior researcher at the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, so at the CSIR. She has a background in civil engineering and urban studies. She is at the forefront of applied research in transport safety, road user behavior, and infrastructure planning. She leads initiatives within the CSIR's Transport Safety Laboratory, exploring innovative tools and methodologies to support safer, more efficient transport systems. Her work integrates technology and research to enable evidence-based planning and advance road safety outcomes across South Africa and beyond. So Lerato, please switch on your camera for us and just give us a brief overview of your expertise. Thank you.
Thank you, Sibongile, and good afternoon to everyone. Thank you to SAICE for the opportunity to participate in today's webinar. I am a civil engineer by qualification and traffic engineer by training. Currently working in the research and development space in the CSIR Smart Mobility. Specifically looking at transport safety research and transport planning. And I think my contribution today will just trying to bring a research-informed view of the opportunities and the challenges drawn specifically from literature and some of our projects and the potential application of AI in the work that we do as engineers in transportation at the CSIR, and also just looking at the broader developments in our civil engineering field. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Lerato. We look forward to a very engaging session from you. Our second speaker will be Mr. Alan Robinson. He is a highly respected figure in the SAICE community. He is a retired network planning manager at SANRO and a seasoned transport planning and traffic engineer. Though he is retired, he continues to build in-house capacity at SANRO and serves on the SAICE Transportation Division Committee. With intensive experience in developing South Africa's strategic road infrastructure, He has played a very pivotal role in shaping efficient and sustainable mobility across the country. So, Alan, please just give everyone a brief overview of your career journey and insights before we dive into the big discussion.
Well, thanks, Amelia. I've been a civil engineer for nearly 40 years. I spent 30 years as a consultant and the last 10 years at SANRO. Network planning is basically my forte, to try and make sure that we build the right things at the right time. That is not an easy task, considering the constraints that you've got to work within. And one of those constraints, as we all know, is called money. So we've got to get value for money, and we've got to make sure that the system that we're planning is there for the long term. I think that's basically all I need to say at this stage, and look good for a good debate. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alan. And then our final speaker will be Professor Mohammed Mustafa. So Prof. Mohammed is the head of civil engineering at the University of KwaZulu-Natal and the director and chair of the KZN Department of Transport and Sustainable Transportation. With a PhD in pavement engineering from the University of Liverpool, he brings a very rich multinational experience in academia and research. His work is dedicated to advancing sustainable transportation solutions and shaping the next generation of engineering professionals. So thank you so much. Prof, please just turn your camera on and share a bit of your background with us.
Thank you so much, Sibongeli, and appreciation for SAICE for this opportunity. As you rightly mentioned, I'm the chair of Sustainable Transportation, the chair at UKZN, supported by KZN DOT, and sustainability is the core of our research. And today I'm trying to talk not to sustainability, but more into AI in education. So we'll talk about what's happening in the higher education sector. Are we preparing our new graduates for the AI? Are they going to be more AI compatible compared to the current audience in this webinar? We'll also, of course, highlight the challenges in the higher education sector when it comes to AI, and bring some, let's say, good news and some bad news regarding what's happening in the higher education sector. So yeah, looking forward for it. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much to all our speakers for those insightful introductions and for sharing your impressive career journeys with us. So we're going to just get into the heart of our discussion today. And with that, I'd like to just start with Ms. Lerato. Taking from your background and how you have been in the civil engineering space, right? What would you say are the ways that artificial intelligence is already being integrated into engineering processes, and how is it enhancing decision-making and project outcomes within the transport and infrastructure sectors?
Thanks, Mangile. Okay, I think one of the most exciting uses that we are seeing is AI-driven pattern recognition in transport data, and just the integration of multimodal and multi-source data. So artificial intelligence like supports the fusion of like different data types, so video, LiDAR, telematics, data from our smartphone apps, satellite imagery, and it uses this to create like comprehensive views of our transport system. And we also have like computer vision and machine learning, which is used to automate the collection and classification of road assets and traffic condition data. So including assessing a permit quality, signage, road geometry, the frequency and nature of near-miss accidents. And I think looking at bringing in that lens of transport safety, artificial intelligence is already helping us to proactively identify high-risk locations, because it facilitates a shift from reactive to proactive sort of road safety management approach. So instead of like waiting for crashes to happen, we can use AI models and feed them various data sources to predict where crashes are likely to happen. And an example that I would like to share in this regard is there's a study that was done in Nairobi that investigated whether like public data from Twitter can be transformed into a usable resource for transport and urban planners. And the study actually demonstrated how social media data can be used to generate crash data information or crash maps. The researchers, they collected over 870,000 traffic tweets between 2012 and 2020 around Nairobi, and they were able to apply machine learning and geocoding to identify specific crash events. Right. So they then geolocated over 32,000 crash reports from sifting through all of the data, and just the efficiency of that alone is the power that AI provides us with. But anyway, they were able to produce like a first geolocated data set of crashes for the city and a first crash map. Using a spatial clustering algorithm as well, they were able to locate like portions in their road network, which were less than 1% of the road network, where 50% of the crashes identified. And obviously that could also be attributed to larger reporting in that area. Maybe it was an urban area where more people have mobile phones. But I think it's quite a groundbreaking initiative that they did, because in South Africa, we also struggle with the availability of data in road safety, the availability of crash data. And these are ways that, we can leverage AI to overcome some of these challenges. Thanks.
Okay. Lerato and all my speakers, just a reminder, when you are speaking, please just switch on your camera so that the people can see you and see who they are speaking to. Thank you so much for that. And taking on that, so I was going to say, this is going to be a question that will be directed at you, Ellen. As Lerato has touched on how decision making is actually being done because of AI, how would you say that we need to ensure that rural and urban areas are equally prioritizing these infrastructure upgrades?
That's actually a very difficult thing. Obviously, whatever we do, it has to be economically viable. So, for example, if you wanted to do a let's get back to the other topic of this. They call it wireless EVs. I think that's on the topic. It took me a while to work out what they were, as opposed to wired EVs. But effectively, it's road charging. They have some sort of induction in the road, which now obviously, when you're putting it in a road like the N3 or in the city on the freeways, you're going to get a lot of use out of it. You can't do that everywhere. It's just not economically viable. Well, certainly not in the short term. So there has to be priorities. And I think this is what has to be discussed quite at length, is the rollout of technology, is because in certain countries where everything is, let's call it first world, it's taking off. We have about 750,000 kilometers of road. Now you try and imagine, there's gravel roads, there's minor roads, there's access roads, there's major roads, corridors. Where you actually put this charging has to be set up. But obviously, wireless charging is not going to be the only thing. And there's still, and again, in terms of infrastructure, it doesn't really make any difference in terms of the number of vehicles on the road, in terms of the EVs. Mm-hmm. When you go to, let's call it AI, the big thing here is the autonomous vehicle, because that's going to make a big difference to the infrastructure requirements. And, the question is in what way? And I think maybe we need to discuss that. Reason being is with autonomous vehicles, if there's sort of critical mass, you need less road space. Now, we are building roads looking at 30 years from now on what do we need. And at the moment, we're making them bigger. Now, if AI and autonomous vehicles take off, we can actually not do that. So, we have to just, it's going to be a debate on timing.
Mm-hmm. And I can imagine it's going to be timing, and then it's going to be risks and cost implications as well.
Huge risks and costs both ways.
Yes. Sure. Okay. And then also, this I'm going to take to Prof, because what you're saying, then it means that the engineers that we're taking out of school needs to then be very tech savvy, and they need to be aware of what AI is doing. So Prof, from a university institution perspective, how would you say that you're preparing engineering students for AI and EV transformation?
All right, let's first start by talking about what is AI is doing to our current profession.
Mm-hmm.
In simple words, AI is saving us time. So basically, we are not bringing in new knowledge using the AI. And just to give an example, long time ago, people used to draw using papers and ink and so on. Now they draw using AutoCAD. So AutoCAD is just a tool to save time, but we are still doing the same science using a different technology. The same is happening now with the AI, that we are having tools which can save us a lot of time and do more complex jobs than what one engineer can do in very short time. And the example Riratu gave about the Nairobi case study is a very good example that imagine a researcher spending time to collect this data. So basically, the AI has two different aspects. The first aspect is the AI science itself, the development of these tools we are using, including the one you are using to do the transcript for this meeting or webinar, and the application side of the AI. So in terms of the development of the AI tools, this is where the engineering departments are really active. So there are so many universities worldwide, and let's focus on South Africa, who are working on, if not already have developed new courses in their curriculum to equip their engineers with skills needed to develop and enhance AI tools. And when I'm saying engineering departments here, I'm referring to electronics, electrical, computer engineering in general. And examples are like Vets University, UCT, and of course UKZN as well. On the other side, what interests most of our attendees today is the application. We are civil engineers. We are not developing AI tools. We want to use the AI tools to facilitate our work. So, are we preparing our students to be able to use the AI tools? I'm talking now civil engineering students in their work life. In other words, will the graduates of 2025, 2026 onwards will be able to use the AI tools without the need to spend more time studying them, similar to anyone in this webinar today? I don't think the answer is yes yet. I'm aware that UCT, for example, are trying to incorporate some components into the modules where students are already exposed to coding. At UKZN, we are busy developing new curriculum where coding and AI will be part of what civil engineering students will study. Some lecturers started to look into incorporating AI into their teaching. So, in other words, force the students to start to use the AI tools. However, this is facing a challenge, which is an ethical challenge. So in the old days, and now I'm referring to maybe 12, 18 months ago, when you ask your students to write a report or a small research brief or a small dissertation on a topic, you just use a simple plagiarism tool, and then you know that they have generated this themselves. But now with the AI tools are capable of generating text easily. So how can we differentiate between AI assisted and AI generated text, for example? That's something very difficult at the moment, and the technology is not available. So there is a need for a mind shift. We need to change the mentality of the lecturers. How do we assess our students so that from one side we are forcing them to use the AI tools to develop skills which will help them in their work after university, and from the other side we need to maintain the academic integrity. So this is the dilemma where most of our South African universities are at the moment. Very few universities, including UKZN, came up already with AI policy for the students to help them understand what is allowed, what is not allowed. However, there is a general fear factor. So most of academics, most of students are afraid of using AI tools because of the plagiarism issue. They think, what is the line between plagiarism and no plagiarism? So there is a need at the moment for academics to, first of all, be familiar with what they want their students to use. Secondly, encourage postgrad students to do research using AI tools. And again, I refer to the example by Lerato earlier. And thirdly, start to look into new innovative assessment methods to be able to assess the students fairly, and also at the same time produce graduates who are ready for this new era.
Sure. Yeah, no, because ethical behavior is also a problem. So now, if it's like that with universities, Lerato, can I just pose this question for you? Because if universities are struggling with ethicalness, how do we in the industry then ensure ethical and unbiased AI systems in the environment, in the engineering environment in general?
Yeah, so I think in the engineering space and practice, I think it starts with our data, right? I think we need to use inclusive and representative data. And in the South African context, I think we have to build AI tools that reflect our diverse spatial and social realities. And the biases in AI, I think they often originate from like maybe the historical data that is incomplete, that is not representative, or it's just structurally biased. And for example, again, using crash data, right? You may have underreporting of incidents in rural or low-income areas, or they may be absent entirely in those informal settlements. And going back to the case study of the Nairobi, where they use the social media as well, like I said, the data is probably available for the urban areas. And not the rural areas. We need to think about how do we overcome that. An approach maybe that could be used is also we need to be in terms of ethics we need to make use of what they call explainable AI models, right? So there's this theory that a lot of the AI tools that we use are black boxes. They just spit out answers. They also hallucinate. That's a term I recently learned, is that they don't actually know how to tell you that I don't know an answer to this, to what you're asking, or I don't know how to do it and I'm not sure. And therefore they will hallucinate and make up an answer that is false. That's quite a big risk as well. But for us as researchers and engineers and policymakers, I think we do need to adopt maybe the use of explainable models. This is where we would maybe choose or build models that allow us to have that transparent input and output relationship, where we can incorporate confidence levels and contribution. And there's just an easier way to validate the work that we're doing. And also importantly, for the ethics question is that we need to have policy and governance frameworks that define how AI should be used in the public interest. So there has to be like some kind of ethical oversight board or review panel in our institutions or organizations. Especially for like if we do models that could be deployed at scale in infrastructure or safety. And I guess in short, what I'm trying to say is that we have to address the full value chain or full pipeline, how we collect and curate the data, how we validate the AI model outputs, and how we then govern the use of the different AI tools in our engineering society. I think maybe another thing I can add to the, I know you didn't ask about the risks, right? But there are a lot of risks with our use of AI and applying it in engineering, especially, and I'll just list maybe 2 or 3. The first one is that, like I said, data. AI models are only as good as the data that we train them on. And the issue of biased or low quality data that can produce either misleading outcomes or discriminatory outcomes. And then secondly, we have the risk of obviously then our engineers relying on AI without understanding the underlying assumptions. And this could lead to inappropriate design decisions, right? And if engineers can't understand or interrogate model outputs, this sort of results in like a blind reliance and like reduced professional judgment. That's a risk. And the other risk is the widening skills gap. Also, if we as engineers don't learn to work alongside these AI models. So I think in my view, we don't necessarily need to become coders as engineers, but we definitely need to understand how these tools think and what data they need and how we critically evaluate the outputs that we get out of it.
Totally agree, Lerato. And as we speak about that, then we need cross-sector collaborations that are needed to future-proof our transportation systems. But Ellen, how do we then do that? How do we ensure that the cross-sector collaborations that we can do, and which ones are the ones that are needed to future-proof the transportation systems?
Yeah, excuse the sunlight, it hits me in the face, but I think Prof and Lerato have brought up some really good issues, and this is where the collaboration is needed. For example, like they've said, AI is a tool. It's probably as exciting as Lotus 123 was when I started. Now Excel is standard, well, sort of, and this is the new toy. And I think we've got to be very careful on how we use the new toy. What am I going to say? The other thing that was very important is the ability for an engineer to use it. What is frightening is that people are using it as the utopia to engineering and everything you need to do. And that is very dangerous. What would be nice in terms of the infrastructure planning, and this is where we need to collaborate between the researchers, the academic side of things, and the actual implementers, is looking at the risk based on scenario analysis, which uses tons of data, which is collected and validated using AI, to come look at different scenarios and look at the probability of these scenarios actually happening. Now, that is a monster task, but it highlights the risks that one would be facing. as an engineer, one must be able to look at those options, look at the risks, and make a choice. Because that's what we have to do. We have to make a choice. Because at the end of the day, we have to build something. And we have to build something that's going to last a long time. And yes, it is adaptable. Like I said earlier, it is not too difficult to retrofit something within an existing road where you actually don't need so much pavement anymore. And it's easy to do. The other way is not so easy. So we've got to look at that. But it's how to use these tools, these AI tools, to gather enough information, enough solutions, and the associated risk of any one of them. And that collaboration. In terms of, like you said at the moment, I'm trying to build a little bit of in-house capacity. And one thing you'll find with me, and I believe I've been doing it a long time, is I don't want somebody to bring me an answer. I want somebody to bring me some numbers and an explanation of what they actually mean. And I've learned that for younger people, that's not necessarily easy. It might sound easy, but apparently it isn't. So in other words, if AI comes up with an answer, you have to explain that answer within the context of what you're trying to do. And maybe that's where we need to collaborate across the research, the academia, and implementation, is that thought process of the engineer or the professional or whatever to assimilate what went in, what came out, and apply that thing called common sense. Does this result make sense? And how do we train people to do that? So that's the cross-pollination I think we need to work on. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alan. But now, in terms of institutions such as SAICE, how do we then ensure that we are equipping our members to ensure that they are also future ready for this? Because you can do it in school, yes, and then you do it in practice, and then you join institutions like us. We provide such platforms, but then why else do you think that SAICE institutions and others that are similar can do better? This is a question that I'm posing to each of the panel panelists. Then each of you can jump in on this one.
Okay, let me jump in first. I think your question has threefold. The first one is using AI as an institution to better serve your clients, members. So yeah, you need to acquire the right tools to make your members feel better, improve the service you provide to your members. So that's one fold. The second one is training. So we mentioned that the students who graduated 1 or 2 years ago, they never heard about AI. So now they heard about it when they graduate. So they require knowledge, they require training on tools, and it's not always easy for people to be self-learning. So training on using tools, and again, I will refer very, very much to what Alan just mentioned, that it's a new toy. It's not going to give you the answer. This is very important. And we struggle with this at universities for a long time, that we tell the students that the models are not going to give you the solution. You need to validate the answer. You need to make sense of the answer. You need to understand the answer. And this will continue with the AI. It's even worse now because people will think that AI has the right answer, and that's not correct. And Lerato rightly mentioned that they are biased tools because they are trained on data, and they are as good as the data are. So training is the second fold for SAICE to consider. And the third one will be, let's say, contribution to the research, the collaboration you mentioned, the collaboration Alan talked about. There is a need for collaboration platforms. So I know, for example, Sabita is busy developing a forum for industry academia collaboration, but this will focus on Sabita interests. There is a need for bigger platform for cooperation between industry, academia, and government. And this collaboration should address all the AI issues. And Lerato mentioned the need for government policies and guidelines. Definitely, there is a need for one. There is also, she mentioned the need for AI tools trained on local data, because the local context is important. So this is also a collaborative effort. So there is a need for collaboration platform. So SAICE can do the three folds in summary. AI tools to facilitate the membership services, training for civil engineers on using AI tools, and in establishment of a collaborative platform where government, academia, and industry can come together to discuss how to make the most of the new toy, as Alan referred to.
Thank you, Prof. Alan, Lerato, is there anything you want to add to that?
Lerato?
No, I don't have much to add. I think I share the same sentiment as Dr. Mohammed. I think the role of SAICE and the similar bodies really is for to help us, or to provide learning pathways that can equip us as professionals in how we use these tools and apply them to the daily activities that we do. And the guidance on the ethical use is very, very, very important, because these are tools that are just very easily accessible to all of us. Anyone can just do whatever, put it in a project report, and there's just big risks with that workflow, and it needs to be managed or regulated. But even if it's not regulated, the training part that can come through bodies like SAICE, I think, is important, just to equip us as the members.
Just from my side, I'll go back to my mantra, is there's quite a lot of courses that everybody does which teaches you how to do something. One that I find is quite lacking is teaching people, or let's call it enhancing people's ability to think. It's something that has to be practiced. I find it gets lost quite easily. And I think from SAICE's point of view, I'd like to see a lot more of that happening. Because if you can think something through from a logical perspective, and even, we've got all these terms nowadays called critical thinking and divergent thinking and all that. I like to just think, as long as people can think, they can work. As an engineer, you'll be able to work your way through it. Thank you.
I totally agree. I totally agree. Now, there's a question I want to put here, and I'm going to address it to all of you still. But so it goes, and it says that, in what ways can AI and EV technologies accelerate the goals of the African continental free trade era? And how can we as the engineering sector contribute to ensuring these technologies are inclusively and sustainably integrated across the continent? Anyone want to grab a squeeze at it?
I nominate Ellen.
Say no.
Okay, let me bounce back to you, Subangeli, and ask, do we really have an African agenda? Is it different from the Western agenda? I don't think so. I think that we are so much driven by the Western agenda when it comes to sustainability, long-term planning, climate change, and so on. And Alan mentioned something very important early today when he talked about rural and urban areas, and that the economic affordability is very important. And I think the question will be, do we need to use AI technology everywhere? Do we need to use or introduce electric vehicles everywhere? Do we need to move away from producing electricity using coal and use renewable energy the same pace and the same let's say the same amount like the Western countries? So many questions are really needed to be asked correctly in the African context, and we always talk about that, during the colonization era, and I think the colonization era is still continuing from economic perspective. We are so much dominated by the Western view in terms of the economic agenda. And when it comes to AI particularly, this will take us to the point Lerato mentioned earlier about how biased the tools are because of the data. So we need really to think in a bigger perspective about our needs in the African context, continent, and what really do we need to do in terms of introducing new technology, including AI and electric vehicles?
%100%. 100%.
100%.
Just as a, can I just, we're even going to do a punt for SATC. I mean, the theme this year is mobility solutions for Southern African challenges. And I came up with two immediate questions. One is define mobility within the context. And secondly, what are our challenges? Because if you don't know what you're trying to do and you don't know what the challenges are, you're just going to apply something somebody else thought was a good idea somewhere else. And this is the basic thinking we've got to come up with, which answers that question. Do we need it? Yes and no. Again, there's no clear answer to it. So, yeah, again, we just got to apply your mind and sort of weigh up options.
Fully agree. These are very insightful discussions we've had. So now what I want to do is, I'm seeing a lot of people want to engage. So I just want to open it up for us so that at least there are people who can ask specific questions that they can ask. I see Chris Beta, so I'm just going to enable your mic and then you can ask you and pose your question. Chris, I've enabled your mic. Okay, I don't think that Chris is asking his question. There is somebody else, Jennings Chikombe. Can I please ask my lady to enable your mic and then you can pose your question.
So Magida, can I just say a quick thing in the meantime? Just looking through the chat.
There's a comment. I was going to come to that.
Well, it's just all AI assistants taking notes for somebody, which they'll never read. I mean, that's the use of AI at the moment. It's just everybody.
It is everywhere. We have ChatGPT. It's everywhere. So there's one question. It's a comment per se, and I wanted to touch on this while Chris and Jennings are getting ready. It's actually posed to Lerato. It's autonomous vehicles. The average age of the motor vehicles on our roads is between 12 and 15 years. Depending on which sources you choose to reference, it'll take quite a while for our vehicle fleet to be fully autonomous. What's your take on that? This question is from Rudy.
Yes, I think that's absolutely correct. I think in our African context, AVs probably won't take off at the same pace as in the developed countries and your Americas and the Europe. And like recently when we presented our Drive Lab at an exhibition, there was a question. There were a lot of people that were keen, that were asking if the technology that the CSIR is using in their Drive Lab, are they selling it? Is it available for people to buy? And this was quite an eye-opening question, because we have a big market in South Africa of like secondhand vehicles, of people that are not buying the latest vehicles that cost 2 million rands, that are equipped with all these technologies and sensors and all of this. So we need to be also looking at developing affordable and accessible toolkits that people can retrofit to their existing vehicles, that can speak to that secondhand market. So I don't think that we should be maybe prioritizing technologies for autonomous vehicles or infrastructure for autonomous vehicles, but our policy should sort of start laying that groundwork and framework for that in future. We don't have to lag behind in regulating and be reactive when it does take off, then start implementing or developing the policies. We can start doing the necessary research work and developmental work to inform our regulations and policy frameworks, even though we're not necessarily rushing to implement the infrastructure. It's the same question that Ellen was asking. Do we need that? Do we need to be prioritizing ABs? No, it's not the most critical problem that we need to be solving for our socioeconomic context.
I totally agree. Because if you see these EVs, most of them now don't even need charging ports. They actually charge themselves. So it's quite an interesting space to be in. Jennings, that lady has enabled
if I may, sorry, Subangeli, if I may add a very recent example about EVs in the African continent. It just happened last week in Egypt. They do have around 10,000 vehicles, which are electric vehicles. 85% are Chinese, 15% are European / American. And the government stopped the Chinese protocol for charging, which means that those Chinese cars cannot use the charging stations available in the country. So you have the car, you have the charging station, you have the charging cable, but you can't charge. So 15% only of the electric vehicles in Egypt are working this week, and 85% are just parked where they are, and people cannot use them at all. So this will take us back to the question you just raised now. Do we need to build infrastructure and invest heavily in electric vehicles while we as a country do have an electricity production problem? We are not able to keep our homes and factories supplied with enough electricity all the time. So we need really to think strategically. It's not that we need to just follow the Western agenda. Again, this will take us back to the question on African agenda. What is our priority as a continent? What do we need to do to our people? It's not like, okay, someone without a toilet at home and we provide them with Starlink internet. That's not the priority. Okay, the priority is to provide them with sanitary infrastructure. So again, who is or how many people in the country are able to buy electric vehicles? Lerato just gave a very good example that The second-hand vehicles market in this country is huge. So there is a need to prioritize, to rethink, and not to rush into introducing new technology just because we need new technology. But this will take us back to the AI. The AI is reality. And if we don't really deal with it correctly for the benefit of our economy and our civil engineering profession, we will face the music in the near future. So thinking is very important. Strategic planning is very important. Need for platforms where academia, industry, and government come together to discuss what do we need to do is very important.
Thank you for that, Prof. I have about 2 questions. I'm not sure if they are questions or they are points from Duma Sizwe. I'll just start on the first point, and it is directed at you, Prof. So he says that it's a good point on African View by Prof. But then to then add to that, how do we pace the uptake of new technologies to what we need to keep up with the rest of the world versus steaming ahead and adopting blindly? An unrelated example is traffic departments insisting on booking. Ooh, okay. More questions came up as I was reading that one question. Of the world versus streaming ahead and adopting blindly. So an unrelated example is traffic departments insisting on booking for drivers and learners licenses online when a good percentage of the population has never touched a computer. How do we adopt and develop responsibly and without leaving anyone behind?
Good. And this is a very good example. Let me start with it. Yes, I have a lot of people who never touched a computer or laptop, but they know how to use TikTok and Instagram. So we have the technology, but we are not directing people to use the technology the right way. We don't have our priorities right. So the priorities must be discussed. The strategies must be discussed. So there is a need to balance between our needs and how to not to match what's happening in the West. That's not the target. The target should be how to maximize the advancement available to us to meet our needs and to solve our local problems. And local doesn't mean that Durban or Pretoria. Local is African continent because we share a lot of challenges with the most of the African countries, and in fact with a lot of Asian countries as well. So finding the balance is very important. It's not going to happen through the government only. This is a collective effort where, as I said, academia, industry, government, NGOs, professional bodies, there is a need for a proper discussion on how to find the balance between improving the life of the people, meeting their needs, and using the technology. Which technology? That's a very important question. Which technology is needed for our context?
Lerato, Ellen, you don't want to add anything to that?
Yeah, and there's a very good comment from, I think it's David from Ethiopia. He raises a great thing. There's 2 things here. One is to get a balance. It's called reality, and there's tools of AI. And you got to get that right. And, you know, it's like everything. Unfortunately, you've got everybody jumping on a bandwagon that AI is the thing. It's what's the future. It's everything. We don't have to think about it. And that's just so dangerous. There is there's a movement actually happening where they want to bring back a thing called, which most people might not be able to remember, pen and paper in the classroom. Because you learn so much better when you are not on a computer. You know, you have to write things down, you have to engage, you have to think. And there's actually quite a bit of work going on about improving learning by going back to learning with a piece of paper and writing. But, you know, it would actually be interesting to see what other people in academia think about in terms of teaching with pen and paper versus computers. I mean, to the point, I mean, there's a thing I was reading that having a phone can kill about a couple of hours a day out of your time, purely because the brain, when you're distracted, loses the last 90 seconds. So in other words, every time your phone goes ping, you've lost 90 seconds of your memory. And the amount of pings that it happens during the day, and these people at universities and schools are going through this on a daily basis. You know, now, is this an AI thing? I don't know. You know, I'm not calling AI, I'm calling technology. It's actually more disruptive in the learning process than probably, maybe my view is, it's probably more disruptive than a benefit. Prof, I don't know if you want to add on that one, but it's just a view.
It is disruptive if it is used wrongly. Again, it's about finding the balance, use the right tools. So, for example, I'd love my students in a classroom to be able to use their laptop and tablets to interact with the knowledge I am disseminating during the lecture, but not to check their Facebook or emails. And it happens even in our meetings at workplaces. You find most of those who are attending a meeting busy, and I'm guilty as everyone, busy checking their emails and responding to emails, and they lose quite important time of the discussion, and a lot of them, they don't even engage. So it is happening at all the levels. And at teaching, it's more important to get the full attention of the students. And we can't just say simply no laptops, no computers, no internet, just use a paper and pen. But that's not the solution. The solution is to find the right balance of using the technology, the right technology, to help the students to learn better. So, what type of assessments we are giving them to do? What type of assignments we are giving them to do? What type of tasks? We need in academia to force them into the right path of using AI, similar to what have been done with the previous examples of advancement in technology, like SPSS in statistics and AutoCAD and drawing, and even Microsoft tools, which became Excel and Word. They became basic now, but when we were students, they were not. So it's the same. How to find the balance that force the students to do the right thing? It's a very difficult question to answer, and I think those who are doing a lot of research on engineering education will definitely be busy over the next few years trying to answer the question of how to integrate AI properly into teaching and learning.
That's very insightful, Prof. And there's a question that actually was going to ask what you just answered. So I think, Carol, that second part of your question, let me just read the question for you, Prof. And I think you have just touched on it. So the second part of her question, I'll go to the first, but then the second one, she says, should schools and universities not be actively exploring how to integrate AI into the curriculum to avoid falling behind the rest of the world, particularly in South Africa? And then sorry, Bob. Let me just do part of the question because it's together. And then she asked as well, since AI is growing stronger and cannot realistically be stopped, especially by schools and universities, should the real concern not be whether universities can adapt quickly enough to help students use this to its full potential and then increase their productivity in the process?
Yeah, it's not optional. We have to do it because we don't graduate engineers to work in our home cities and that's it. We graduate engineers who are international citizens. And unfortunately, we don't develop the engineering science in South Africa or even in Africa. Engineering science is developed in other countries, and most of the theories and design methods and so on are developed elsewhere. So we have to use the tools. Otherwise, we will not be able to work in the international village. So again, it's about finding the balance, how to force it. And I agree on the second part about concerns. Are universities moving fast? Unfortunately, the higher education sector in South Africa is facing a lot of challenges, economic mainly, financial challenges, some bureaucratic challenges, and others. So they are moving, but slow. And definitely it is a concern, and it may affect our ability to use the tools properly. But again, the main concern is, do we really need to use all these tools, or do we need to have basic knowledge which will help us to use the tools properly? And I'm talking civil engineering. But the main concern should be on the non-civil engineering side, on the development of the science. If we don't move fast and be able to develop our science in AI, we will end up again with just Western developed science, which is not 100% compatible with our needs.
Inside. On top of that, Prof, Lerato, would you like to add anything to that?
No.
Okay. Prof, on top of that, I think we've already also just touched on this question because it's going to link onto that. So David Zwede is asking, so while he believes that AI is necessary, he's concerned about the extent to which we should integrate it into our daily lives. This is something that Alan touched on already. And there should be limits to ensuring a balance. What do our speakers think about this? I think we have touched on it, but if you want to add more to what you spoke about, you may.
All right. I usually ask my students, which tools, AI tools, do you use in your study or research or whatsoever? And most of them, they say we don't use any. Maybe they are afraid to declare that they use AI tools. But I tell them simply, look at AI tools as you have hired a secretary, an assistant. So you send an assistant to the library to collect books on a specific topic, and then this assistant will sit with the books and do summaries for you. Then you will take the summaries and read them and try to make sense of those summaries and put your engineering sense to that. So how much time is saved? A lot. So that's the idea of the tools. We need to encourage our engineers to use the right tools for their tasks. And of course, this will require them to have a lot of knowledge of what's happening in the AI domain, especially when it comes to professional applications. So this is very important, and this is the task which will really be challenging to a lot of engineers to keep updated with what's happening, because the developments are like daily developments. It's not happening every few months now, it's happening every day, something new. So they need to be aware of what's happening. They need to be able to choose the right tools and then to make sense of what they are using. This is very, very important.
I agree. Any of our speakers want to touch on that as well? Alan, Larato?
I think it's quite well covered.
It is. Okay.
Yeah,
I have a
very
question
well
over
covered.
here. Oh, sorry, Alan.
No, I'll say very well covered. I said
Okay.
they're tools, just know how to use them
You have to.
and stay up to date to the
Otherwise,
latest.
you're just going to take too much information and then you're not going to know what to do with it. There's a question here directed at Larato. They're saying that thank you for sharing insights on the CSIRs on autonomous vehicle trails. Could you just elaborate on whether any notable research findings emerged regarding the influence of road geometry, pavement structure, traffic planning, or other civil engineering design aspects? Additionally, were there any sustainability considerations highlighted in relation to these design parameters?
Yes. So no, we have not done autonomous vehicle trials. Maybe I didn't share that correctly. So what we have is what we call a drive lab. And basically, it's a vehicle that has been instrumented with different sensors that can track driver behavior, that can measure and study what we call naturalistic driving studies. So we are able to, in sort of a single platform, study road safety in the context of the driver's behavior, interaction with other motorists, the road infrastructure itself, the environment. And just looking at the implementation of the safe system approach that advocates for designing roads that are more forgiving of human error and that take that into account. And the whole objective with our drive lab and studying naturalistic driving studies is to try and understand human factors better, right? So when we look at the state of road safety in South Africa, the numbers are telling us that over 87% of road crashes are actually because of road factors. So then we have this technology that studies human behavior in relation to all the other factors that I mentioned. The technology that we have, so the car doesn't drive itself, it's not autonomous. It still needs a human driver, but we're able to just get more out of those experiments and to better understand how we can inform road design and manuals and guidelines and even vehicle technologies to improve our road safety risks. So one of the studies that is ongoing right now with our drive lab is we are looking at alternative road signage for vulnerable road users, so pedestrians and motorists. Specifically, the use of fluorescent yellow signage signs, and we are trying to push for this to be implemented in our public roads in low visibility situations because the fluorescent yellow color is more reflective. So the Transport Safety Lab is very new at the CSIR. It was only launched last year, October, and there's several research activities that are ongoing. But right now, we're not specifically looking at autonomous vehicles. I'm sure we will in future.
Okay. On top of that answer, there's another question directed at you, Lerato. It says that how does Africa plan to sustain EVs for the longer term, looking at the fact that we actually import almost all of the parts that are used?
Yes. Okay, so I'm not an EV expert or anything, but definitely I think that's a critical challenge. I think Africa's electric vehicle sustainability will depend a lot on us developing like localized value chains, looking at battery assembly, doing that locally, the component manufacturing, doing that locally, maybe even the lithium processing, if that's something that's feasible. I know that we do have a white paper on EV that was developed for South Africa. I haven't engaged a lot with it, and I don't know what exactly it says, but I would imagine as a foundation and for long-term sustainability, it takes me back to what Ellen said when he opened up. He said we need funding, we need the investment. So there needs to be that financial investment in the research and development, in the infrastructure development, and maybe also you could link it with the Africa Free Trade question that you raised earlier, that there could be some regional coordination coming from that to support the scaled production of these components that support EVs and autonomous vehicles in future, and we can build a whole economy around that. But yeah, those are very systematic issues that are not directly solvable, through science and maths and engineering.
True. Prof, there is another question that is directed at you. It says that student educational institutions also actively update their course offerings so that they don't keep graduating students who may be good at using AI, but in career fields that might be replaced by AI itself.
For sure, that's very important. Some professions will disappear in the future because of the AI. So there is a need to look at what type of jobs will be available in the future and relook at the curriculum offered at universities to be able to meet the market. And this is not only because of the AI. This is a continuous exercise at all universities to ensure that their students are ready for employability. The good news for engineering is there is no near future change in what civil engineers, in a very specific term, are doing. In fact, civil engineering is thousands of years old, and the changes are always in the technology, in the application, in the materials, but the essence of civil engineering, I believe, is the same sense that the pharaohs built the pyramids, and the need is from civil engineering perspective, to change how our students are thinking. This is very important to be done. And to share some good news with the colleagues that at UKZN specifically, we are busy with what we call Project Renewal. It's a university-wide project where all curriculum in the university is looked at to streamline and ensure that it is meeting the requirements in industry. No major changes are taking place in engineering, but changes in terms of the content of what we offer at different engineering departments is taking place. So unfortunately, it just takes time to approve these changes, especially if it needs to go through CHE and the higher education department. But it is going to happen. So in summary, there is a need, and this need is continuous, and it is happening at universities at different levels, of course. It's not the same at all universities.
Thanks, Prof. I have a very, very long question from our president, so I need to take it in steps so that we can be sure that we are taking in all the full question. So the first part of it is, one takeout I hear is that SAICE needs to take the lead in training persons related to the use of AI and related tools. He puts persons in inverted commas because the training will be different for young candidates against experienced professionals. Training is one of the key service offerings of SAICE. Our delay in rolling out is funding to appoint specialists and professionals to dedicate their time to develop such courses. He goes then to say, I immediately think about the back to basics concept to understand the data to be used and what the value of that is in the design or analysis of a problem. Only once this fundamental process of collection and assessment is fully understood, only then one would be able to offer specific training courses related to AI, which I agree. What would the CSIR, University of KwaZulu-Natal or SANRAL, as an example potential funders, require from SAICE to obtain funding for such developments. So he suggests that the three panelists help us to help the industry, so to be able to think and to ensure that data is collected and used appropriately. So he would welcome any comments from the panelists, please.
That's $1 million question.
Yeah. I think one thing before we went into that, and there's something that might just add to the previous question. Technology is changing at such a rapid rate. I mean, just for example, in terms of equipment in let's call it a toll plaza, there's an 8-year asset refresh cycle. So in other words, every 8 years you put in new stuff. Now, when you consider it takes 4 years to develop a student to become a graduate, that's halfway through to a whole new set of technology. So what do you teach them? You know, it's just a moving target the whole time. So it's not a case of, again, you use whatever technology is available at the time. But, and I'll just go back to an example. Many years ago, I went to a road funding conference, and it was the latest thing was this dedicated short range communication. In other words, the ETAG. And there was a lady there from Malaysia, and they were using infrared as a method of automatic toll collection. And everybody said to her, you know, but this is so outdated and all the rest of it. And she said, yes, I know that, but I've been collecting tolls for the last 10 years. You haven't. And that sort of struck a chord to say that if you continue to chase the latest technology, you will actually do nothing but chase technology. At some point, you've got to put a stake in the ground, work with what you've got, use it for that 8-year period at least, and then reconsider. So it's a continuously moving target. And again, it's like Mohammed said, it's the ability to use tools and understand what they're for and understand what they produce. That's where the engineering is, not in just the use of a tool. So it becomes a very difficult question in terms of changing the curriculum to keep up with technology. It's just not an option. Thank you.
I think the issue around funding is a very difficult one for all of us. I think we all try to raise like funding for our projects and development. But I think in my experience, maybe some advice or that I can offer is that, you know, if we try to align with the national priorities, you know, whether it's DOT, the CETAs and higher education institutions, DSTI itself, which is our leading department, then the grants that come through from there, or the value add, if it speaks to those priorities of the different departments, maybe we could get funding through those mechanisms. It's difficult really because also we have in our country this political stop, start and go that influences how funding is structured around different spaces, particularly also in transport infrastructure. The priorities change with the changing government, you know, and there's just no continuity. And but I think there's also a model of pursuing third-party funding and just collaborating as entities as well, to apply for these grants that are out there and leveraging each other's strengths. But it's a tough one.
Yeah, I see. Okay, funding is important, definitely. But before we go seek funding, we need to identify what do we need funding for. So my proposal to SAICE is to maybe appoint AI champion who can, or coordinator or whatever you call, who can bring in together all the relevant parties to discuss what is needed to be done. There are so many efforts in developing AI tools and using AI tools. So this discussion must take place in prioritizing the strategic objectives of our profession, civil engineering. What do we need to do in this domain? And then identify the research priorities, and based on that, we can look at seeking funding to meet these targets. But the first most important one is to have a tank of thinkers where people can talk to each other and identify what is needed to be done, because it's not as simple as we just think. Yes, it is. The technology is changing very fast. ChatGPT a few months ago was like a huge thing happening in the world. Now there are, I don't know, maybe thousands of known tools to the public. So identifying our priorities is very important, and I believe SAICE can start by having a coordinator for this area of interest, bring together the interested parties, and have this tank of thinkers to start with before we just jump into securing funding for research, which may not lead to anything new.
Thank you for that. Both our president and our CEO are in the podcast, so in the webinar, so we will take that into consideration. Thank you, Prof. There is a very, very important question, and I think it's the last question that we have. It is relating to the taxi industry. So the question is, are we ensuring that the taxi industry is not left behind in the development and integration of autonomous vehicles and artificial intelligence, given that it's actually it plays a vital role in the public transportation? Are there any government intervention programs or initiatives that are in place to support the industry's adaptation to these technological advancements? Can we tackle that? I think Lerato just fell off as well. I think, Alan, you would be the best person to tackle this one.
Again, I think one has to be very careful. Good luck to anybody who wants to replace all the taxi drivers with autonomous vehicles under the current way of doing things. But this is something that does require quite a bit, and probably research, in that how can the taxi industry leverage these tools to help them be more efficient? I'm not even talking AI here. I'm just talking an app, for example, to make things more efficient. And this is where some imaginative thinking needs to come in, and probably even come through with the interaction with the taxi industry. I mean, donkeys years ago, probably early 90s, I was working for a company, and they were saying, how do we improve the taxi industry? And even to the point where people in cars start using it. And my question is, well, to be honest, I wouldn't even know, as a car user, how to catch a taxi. I see people on the side of the road, and they're sort of like this or this. I have no idea what it means. So how do we just explain or use technology to, is it possible to do it in terms of an e-hailing system? where me as a user wants to get somewhere. I don't know which taxi is going where, but by just putting in a location on my phone, it identifies the right taxi and tells him where to pick me up. Like I'm en route. And I can see which taxi I need is going to stop. So, something as simple as that. That's not AI. That's just an app. But I'm sure you get the brains guys going with the AI technology. I'm sure they can come up with a lot of things. But is anybody actually talking to them and understanding what their needs are?
This is indeed true. I'm trying to get Lerato back into the session, but she's just dropped off and not able to. Prof, do you want to give it a try as well?
Yeah, in fact, Alan covered it very well, that it's about the needs. So do we need to take the taxi industry out? No, we need them. So what do we need to do? We need to use the technology, including AI technology, to improve their services and improve their income as well. And I would like to share this with you. Just give me a second. I will share this from my screen. Let me know if you can see this.
I can see your screen.
Are you able?
No,
Yes.
yes,
Okay.
I can.
These are two articles published from Illinois Center for Transportation, which is the biggest transportation research center in the world. The first one is about optimizing next generation transportation systems. All right. And the second one is about develop AI tool for optimal mix design for flexible roadways. So these are two AI new things. Do we need them? That's the question we need to ask ourselves. So, for example, if we look at mixed design, do we need this AI mixed design tool? It will save a lot of testing time, but can we use it in our context for our mixes, for our routes? That's the question needs to be answered. On the other side, do we need the next generation transportation system while we are not able to use our transportation system properly, as Alan mentioned, or where we really don't have yet proper public transportation system in the country? So no one can claim that I will go out from my house or flat today and be able to use public transport efficiently to arrive to my destination, which can be anywhere in this country. That's not possible. So our priorities, we need to put our ducks in a row. We need to get our priorities correctly. And this will take us back to the question raised by the SAICE president. What do we need to do? We need to start talking to each other, all of us. So no one is left behind. No taxi industry, not the academia, not the NGOs, not the government. No one should be left behind. We need to get our needs in the transportation sector properly. And the question will be how to use the new advancements and technologies, including AI, to help solving our needs, not just for the sake of using them.
I fully agree. And that brings us to the end of our session today. And we have gone over just a little bit, but I trust that everyone had a very insightful talk, because I did. And my key takeout from this is that although AI is actually rapidly growing, we do need to be mindful of what we need, what works and what doesn't. And we have to have that thin line there. And we have to always be cognizant of this. And then we need to also ensure that we have cross-sectional collaborations to ensure that we are all adapting at the same time. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today. We will have about more civil talks within the year, and we encourage you to please just follow us on our social media platforms where you can see when the topic is out and who our speakers will be. But from us, thank you so much. And thank you so much to Ellen. Thank you so much, Prof. Thank you so much, Lerato. I think she did go off, but we're unable to bring her in. But thank you so much for sharing your insights. It has been such a wonderful webinar. Thank you, everyone.